we're going to do it by talking about includes and then finally roles. Roles are kind of where you want to head if you want to say that you understand how to work with Ansible and get the most out of Ansible. Roles are complicated in that they've got a lot of files associated with them. They've got a standard directory structure that you need to work with, and they they can do a lot of work. They usually have includes in there. They've got variables, they've got handlers, they've got all this stuff in here that we've been talking about so far. But it's kind of the way to scale Ansible up to make it really useful. So what a role includes do, it's a way to break up configuration policy into smaller files. So we want to simplify, we want to organize, we want to reuse plays. Reusing plays is really important because what it allows us to do is to build standards. Here we've been talking about standards, we've been talking standard configurations, we've been talking about excuse me. Uh, we've been talking about ways to make things auditable, the ways to make them reliable, and that's where we're going with includes and roles. So includes allow us to work kind of at the same level of tasks. You can work with bringing variables with you. You can use templates. You can use lots of different things in an include. Here's a basic task where we've got a common, we've got tasks, we've got a play for our HTTPD machines, we've got a play for our MariaDB, and then down at the bottom we've got the playbook that runs them all. So the common, the web server files, and the database files. Those are all being called by this playbook down at the bottom that has our includes in it. So hosts all tasks include tasks / common.yaml. So by using that include, what we're doing is we're saying, let's grab this playbook out of a separate subdirectory and let's use that, in this case, for all of our hosts. Now we're doing the same thing with the web servers down there too, where we've got hosts web servers and on task include tasks / httpd.yaml. And in that, we're looking up here at this playbook. So, and the same thing with the MariaDB for our database servers. But what does it look like when you run this playbook? Well, it looks like that bottom playbook there. And that makes it a lot easier to work with lots of different machines at the same time. Now, our common.yaml, that's a very normal thing to have. And in there, here we're just installing Vim, which is, probably not necessary. But that may be where you do things like set up NTP for all of your machines. It's where you set up Kerberos, you set up, whatever else you've got going, your SSH keys, whatever it is you've got going across all of your machines. So coming up with a common.yaml is a good way to organize things that happen to all of your machines. Now let's look at our real world deployment. So how would this actually work? In this deployment, we have common, we have web server, we have database. We're sticking with that same thing. So in our common, we want to disable SE Linux. We want to create some standard directories, probably log files or something like that. We want to set up NTP and the service and the time zones and all that kind of stuff. We want to install Vim. We want to screen, TCP dump, MySQL, wget, just a bunch of tools that you want to have on all your machines. Then on our web servers, we want to install our Apache web servers with its vhost configuration. Remember, that tells us how many different web servers we can run on one physical, or in this case, virtual web server. We want to create a web admin user So we've got a user in there that we can access using, web admin is a semi-popular tool to administer web servers, and then we want to deploy a simple one-page application. Our databases, we want to install MariaDB, the server with the configurations that we want. We want to create a DB admin user, and then we want to create a configured database for the application. So basic things we want to do, divided up into common web server and database. To deploy this, if we wanted to do this, what we would do is we would have our real world deployment 2 is what this one is called, and then we've got our templates. We've got an index.php.j2. We've got our my configuration.j2. We've got our NTP Jinja2, and then we've got our vhost Jinja2. And in our includes, we've got common.yaml, webserver.yaml, database.yaml. And here you can see the directories that we've got on the right-hand side of the screen. We've got all our templates organized into one set of subdirectories. And then we have our different playbooks lined up in their own set of subdirectories. And then to run this guy, all that you would need to do would be to use the Ansible playbook, playbook2.yaml. And that would, let's see, that would just run that part. So you'd want to, we need a little bit more on this guy, mixed up. But anyhow, we'll get to that. So includes are just a way to bring a bunch of different configuration files into a standard structure. Now we're going to look at the final version of where we're going with this. Includes is just a step in that direction, and that's to use Ansible roles. Now, Ansible roles are a better way to organize your playbooks, like includes on steroids. Nothing magical here, but we've got this special directory structure. And the directory structure is on the right-hand side of your screen, where we've got our example role, and then we've got our defaults, our files, handlers, meta, task, templates, vars, all that kind of stuff. Those are the different categories that you might have in a really comprehensive role. Now you'll notice that within each one of those subdirectories, we've got a main.yaml play, and you don't need to have all those subdirectories in there. If you don't need them, you don't have to have them. But any place where you've got a subdirectory that's got a main.yaml in it, then Ansible is gonna run that and run the main.yaml. Now we've also got a template in there, and we'd probably have a bunch more, but it'll run those also. So, so if a subdirectory exists and it's got a main.yaml in it, then it's going to run that main.yaml. That's basically what all these rules are. And so here we've got our playbook down at the bottom, and playbook.yaml, and hosts web server roles, memcached, which I haven't seen memcached before, but it's a really neat thing to think about, and httpd. We've got our directory structure on the right hand side on the bottom, and then these files are the main.yaml files, and here we've got our name install memcached with a typo, sorry about that, and yum name memcached stay equals present, and then we enable it. And what does memcached? It's a caching server. So instead of going to a hard drive every time it needs to load a file up, what memcache will do is it'll pick up any files that get loaded and store a copy in the cache, which is a lot faster than going back to the drives all the time. So memcached is just a way to avoid going to your drives all the time for files that you're getting all the time. And then we've got our HTTPD tasks main.yaml also. And we've seen these tasks before, but the new thing about it is the way that we have organized it as roles. And let's see, so here we're adding a little bit more to it. We're coming up with different roles in here based on what kind of a distribution we've got. And here we've got Red Hat and Debian, which of course is our pretty standard differences out there. And let's see, so in one we're using yum, in the other one we should be using apt. I think we got a little mistake in there. Oh, anyhow, but so basically our roles are about directory structures, and roles are a way to organize all the files that you have, and a way to make it easier to get these big, long, complex playbooks into sets of steps that exist in roles that you can reuse for lots of different purposes. That's the same thing. So okay, so here we've got our three roles: common, web server, and database, and our variable app name set in a playbook, and variable set in roles. Okay, so here we go. All right, so our roles, we've got common, and that's got our tasks, main.yaml, templates, and vars, and this goes way back into our slides. Just if you wanted to find these, they exist in there, but it just goes way back into our slides. But here you can see how you might organize all this work in terms of roles. And in this case, we've got common with a bunch of subdirectories. We've got database, bunch of subdirectories. Web server, bunch of subdirectories. But inside each one of those subdirectories, we've got a main.yaml. So we've got a play that we're going to run for all these different components that together make up our architecture. Now, why is this useful? Well, because it makes it so that you can organize things better. Organization matters. It's really what we do. And so you're organizing the things that you need to get done on these machines instead of just having a big long list. Now, which is easier for you to conceptualize? I'm not sure. I kind of like a big long list that I can just scroll through. But roles are the way that most people work in Ansible, and I think it's just that people want smaller individual files to work at. To look at instead of really long ones, and that's what roles gets you. Now, where can you find a bunch of roles out there? Well, GitHub is really becoming the place to find Ansible roles. Another place that's really useful is Ansible Galaxy. Ansible Galaxy is kind of an old site that was set up to allow people to distribute roles using Ansible Galaxy, and here you can see it's got its own format, and it works. It's useful. It allows you to bring stuff over really quickly, and it's really nice. But I would say, it's people are probably more likely to use GitHub these days for these things, just because it's so well known, and there's a lot of things on GitHub. So.